Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. We've got a guest here who is one of the prime movers behind Measure 91, the chief petitioner and public spokesperson of that bill, Anthony Johnson. Right next to me is Casper Leach. Over in the wings is John Cornett, ready to play some music. And there's been a lot of changes in our medical marijuana law this week and in the businesses that are surrounding it. So hopefully we can give you some information on that. So stay tuned as we bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves. All right, so here is John Cornett. Here, John.
Ooh, ready. Hey, I can't play this song enough. Cannabis has not. It didn't just spring up on us yesterday. It's been around for a long time. Our lives for 1,000 more. She will brave the fight. She's my Joan of Arc, reaches through the flames, says, "Come to me, I can heal your pain." She comes to me, gives me sight. She holds me up in the heat of the fight. She's my Mary Jane. She's my Mary Jane. She's my Mary Jane. She's my Mary Jane. Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Anthony. It's good to see you.
Yeah. How you doing?
Casper, welcome.
Hello.
Sarah, so we got Anthony Johnson, Sarah Duff, one of the prime movers behind legalizing marijuana in this state. So I want to congratulate you on your success in that. And you've been busy with the state legislature. I know we got a lot of changes this week. My understanding is they've closed down all the extract companies, and a number of other changes are taking place. What do you think are some of the most important changes that have been implemented this week and over the next week?
Yeah, so I think since
we legalized and regulated marijuana post Measure 91. Sarah and I have both been advocates for not, changing the medical marijuana law. We wanted to implement the adult use system first, and then look to any needed changes with the medical marijuana program. The legislature has decided differently, and each legislative session, I felt like it's like a Clint Eastwood movie, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And to touch on some of the good that has been addressed include allowing growers to serve both patients and the adult use market, to allow patients to shop tax-free at the upcoming OLCC stores, and to be allowed discounts and free cannabis as well from those stores. Those things were not available previously under previous rules and regulations. And then some of kind of the bad and the ugly are the fact that with recent changes about needing licenses to sell extracts, so that's butane hash oil, CO2 extracts using high heat, high pressure, those products, you're not supposed to be able to sell those or even make those without a license. Well, one of the unintended consequences of the legislative change was that the Oregon Health Authority said, well, if you can't produce those without a license, we're not going to allow anybody to make those or allow dispensaries to sell those any further, even though there's no license to get. And I think that was not the intent of the legislature. They thought things would proceed as they have until the Oregon Health Authority got the licenses in place. But that's one kind of bad unintended consequence of the kind of new regulated
So that came
system.
from the Oregon Health Authority, really?
Correct.
I do have a question. Now, we're talking about medibles and edibles and things that you consume. Is that right?
So
Is that right?
So they are going to allow products like edibles, like glycerin tinctures, alcohol tinctures, products that don't use high heat and don't use what they call like hydrocarbon extracts.
Okay.
So the CO2 and the butanes, those aren't going to be allowed, or anything that use high heat aren't allowed, but dispensaries are still going to be able to sell the other products. So hash and things that don't use high heat,
Right.
Those are still allowed.
Well, the reason why I asked is because one of the things that has been a common complaint in the marijuana movement, cannabis movement, hemp movement, whatever you want to term it, is that when you go in to buy a medication or an edible, there is no real regulation to make certain that there's not cat hair in there, or what's really said that THC is in there is really in there. There's been no standard, no one to double check that when you put your money out, you get what that person says that you're supposed to be getting. So won't this in some ways help standardize the market?
Oh, it will. So
Good.
those lab standards are going to be in place, and eventually in a few months, people are going to have a greater knowledge that the THC content, CBD content, that it's tested just like any other food product you consume. So in the end, after a few months, this is going to be a good thing for the
Well,
for
I
the
figure as a consumer,
community,
it's
yes.
a great thing. You know, maybe for somebody who's trying to make the market make a dollar, it might not be. But for someone who's going to be buying something to put into his or her body, this way they know for a fact what's going into it has been checked and overseen and it's been done properly.
Unless they want their
That's
extracts
great.
now. Then they can't get them now.
So the extracts you can get now, but the other products that are like on the shelves at dispensaries, those are allowed. And caregivers and patients are still allowed to make them for themselves, and they're
Okay.
able to share them with other cardholders, but it's not allowed to sell them for a profit.
Oh, okay.
Not extracts, but you can do what I guess concentrates would be. Ironically, they put tinctures and edibles under that category, or is that right? Or is edibles in its own?
Edibles is its own category.
Oh, my bad. But let's see, bubble hash, you could go get that at the store right now. One thing that also went into effect that's pretty exciting is the new veg rule definition.
Yeah, that is
So-
one of the best things. I think.
Yeah, it was so
You wanna
ridiculous
explain
to
that?
try to keep it under a foot tall and foot wide and without flowers. So now instead it can be any size just without flowers, and you can have an unlimited amount of them.
Good.
So that's exciting. There's still so many changes on the horizon that would have been in effect on March 1st, but they pushed it up. Some of the things that Anthony mentioned that was in Senate Bill 1511 that will be exciting, such as the co-location of the gardens. that still hasn't been signed by the governor yet, and there's 3 things that have to be done by the growers for them to be able to keep their patients, and it involves certified mailing with return receipt every patient that you have, and to give people less than a week and a half or whatever it will be by the end of the month, so I guess 2 weeks. And they still haven't signed the bill yet. It's a lot of uncertainty and a lot happening in such a short amount of time. We begged for more time. We got 1 more month, and then they gave us 83 more pages of more bills that we had to learn immediately. So yeah, I think the odds are somewhat stacked in a certain way, but we are going to do whatever we can anyway, and hopefully as many patients as possible will be able to retain their grower.
How is that going to affect medical growers? I've been talking to some people here worried that they aren't going to be able to grow medically. So I'm telling them, there is that co-location now that will be allowed. If you have an OLCC license, you can still have patients in the same garden that are outside of the canopy restrictions. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Correct. And Sarah networks patients and growers, so she has great insight into working with growers and patients as well as a lot of people do. But kind of the short aspect of it, you're going to be able to keep the patients you're growing if you had 16 patients, up to 16 patients as of the first of this year, you can be grandfathered in. You can still grow those 96 plants.
The first of last year.
First of last year. And if you weren't at the 96, then you can be grandfathered in at 48 if you're out of city limits. If you're in residential areas, then you're at 24 or 12 plants for your garden. But if you are outside of city limits and you get an OLCC license, you will be able to get a boost to your canopy limit for patients you grow for.
Which we don't know what that is yet because they haven't signed the bill and we haven't had the rulemaking process yet. So we'll figure that out later.
Correct. So so it's an ongoing thing. It's like a lot of things about the medical marijuana law and the new rules and regulations. If you don't like what they are, kind of wait a few months and they're likely to change on you pretty soon. And another positive aspect that's not in play yet, but will be a smaller tier for what they call like micro growers. So you're not a big grower that need 5,000, 10,000 square feet. It's going to be under 5,000 square feet, and it's going to be lower restrictions, lower kind of land use, lower security requirements, a lower fee, and you'll be able to grow a lower limit on how much canopy limit, but you're also going to be able to grow for patients as well and get a canopy boost for every patient you grow for. And like Sarah said, that's still rulemaking to go through for that, but it will be I think in the end it's going to be a good system, but pardon the pun, but there's just kind of some growing pains with the new regulations.
Yeah, and to answer your question, I think it's going to be very challenging for anyone that's just a pure medical grower because there will be so few places that are medical dispensaries for you to be able to sell to. I think it's going to be great for anybody that's an OLCC licensee, but as we know, a lot of the state has made it illegal to get a license because of the moratoriums, and hopefully some of them will be able to pass when they have their vote in November. Some of them don't have a vote because they didn't get enough people to vote for Measure 91 in the first place. So,
a few of the western counties.
Yeah, especially outside of the I-5 corridor, it's still pretty illegal out there, and that's the really unfortunate thing. I really wish that there was a way to force them to do medical at least, so that at least patients have an option. But it's still pretty much black market or nothing out there for them.
Well, we've heard medical too. How does this affect the recreational? That's going to be our new tourist industry, and I'm sure business owners would like to see that happen.
Oh, for sure. And there are, I think it's 100 cities and counties that have banned or have current moratoriums on the medical marijuana or marijuana businesses in general, and 47 of them are up for a vote. So make sure you're registered to vote, make sure your friends and family vote, and we'll definitely, as activists, be publicizing these elections to make sure we can have safe access as much of the state as possible. And over time, more and more cities and counties are going to come into the fold. They're going to see the revenue that we're going to generate. Oregon generated from just the sale of flour alone, 7 grams of flour to adults, We generated $3.5 million in tax dollars in the first month, which blows past the state projections of a maximum of $40 million we would make in the first year, and that was based upon projections of all products, and this was just flower alone. So,
And just a quarter ounce.
and just a quarter ounce.
Wow.
And cities and counties, whether they banned marijuana businesses or not, they get a piece of that tax revenue until July 1st of next year. And on July 1st of next year, if you don't have any business licenses, you're going to lose that tax revenue. So hopefully they'll see some of this tax revenue, see it put to good use for schools, public safety, mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment programs, and eventually they'll recognize that the sky hasn't fallen in Portland and other places that have plenty of marijuana businesses, and they'll want to come into the fold just as they've done with alcohol over the years.
Well, that was the other aspect. Are we not setting an example now for the rest of the United States to follow? And are we not a shining example as to how we can take this and do something wonderful with it?
I think so. I think we have a good law. It's always seemed to be that we take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I am upset for any patient that loses their grower, for anybody that had a livelihood, but now they're having difficulty because of licensing fees and rules and regulations. But I think each step of the way, each legislative session, we're always going to move forward, and eventually we're going to have a law that works for everyone, and it's something that we can be proud of. And I think already we have a set example for the rest of the country, and eventually when we have legalization across this great nation, then Oregonians can really thrive when Oregon cannabis can be transported to other states.
Because it's been my impression, too, that we've had companies that have moved into this state because of our new laws that would allow them to do research and establish new types of businesses, and even giving farmers a new crop that they can create new jobs with. And we should be able to demonstrate that, right?
Yeah, definitely. We'll likely have a new reports on how much, not only the tax dollars that we're bringing in, but the jobs being created, the ancillary businesses, all these businesses moving in, the mom and pops. Everybody needs consultants, lawyers, tax attorneys, accountants, helpers, and so the really economic impact and is going to be great for Oregon, and definitely be an example for the rest of the country. And I think Oregon is primed to be one of the top states, if not the top state, that's known for the high quality cannabis that we produce.
So we take live phone calls during this show, as you know, and there's been a few people calling in. We've got that number there on your screen. If you have a question for any of us about cannabis, you can call that number there, 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. And we do have a caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Casper, this is Kim.
Hey, how are you?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. Been a long time since I talked to y'all. But hey, I was just wondering about what was happening down in Jackson County with the emergency hearing that they're going to have as far as the Jackson County Land Department ordinances go.
Yeah, so Jackson County, another kind of unintended consequence of new legislation. So the Oregon legislature wanted to give more protections to medical marijuana growers and wanted to grandfather in medical marijuana growers in rural areas that have been providing cannabis for patients in dispensaries, and not have them zoned out. So they wrote into the law that that cannabis would be considered a farm use crop and given the same protections of farm use crops. And unknown to the Oregon legislature, and the Legislative Council, that Jackson County does not allow agriculture crops in rural residential areas. And so they're passing an emergency provision, basically stating to that effect. Activists are working on it, kind of working on all angles of it, trying to get the Jackson County Commission to change that ruling, which could take 6 months to a year. Potentially file a lawsuit to have an injunction, and definitely as a last resort, if necessary, get a change in state law to make sure that the cannabis can't be zoned out of rural residential areas when grown for medical use. Now, this doesn't apply to someone's own personal garden for medical use or for the adult use. So you can grow 10 plants regardless of the new law. And the new law that they put in place is going to be complaint driven. So if nobody complains about you, then it's really no harm, no foul. You can get a non-conforming use permit that will also protect you. That permit's going to cost like $1,500, so not optimal. And I've advised activists down there that maybe we want to pull together a fund that people donate to. So there's a fund for people to pay the fines that you may get if you're deemed to be out of compliance with the land use issue, because it will be a civil issue similar to like a nuisance law. It's not a criminal issue, and it, like I said, it is complaint driven. Technically, it's against the land use laws in Jackson County to grow corn or tomatoes or cucumbers on your property, and people have been doing that for a long time without issue. So hopefully we'll be able to resolve this issue, but it is definitely problematic that people even have to worry about this.
That's kind of like Donald Trump, where he'll pay for your lawyer if you get arrested for having a fight at his rally.
What was the non-conforming use permit?
Yeah, so they are going to offer non-conforming use permits for medical cannabis growers that I believe it's going to cost around $1,500. And that non-conforming use permit will protect you to grow medical cannabis in rural residential areas, even though technically you're not supposed to in Jackson County.
Okay, well that clarifies some things. I appreciate that very much. Keep on, guys, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Good question. Yeah, I didn't know what was going on in Jackson County. So.
Oh man, it's
so much. It's hard to keep track of every city and every county. Oh man.
So you have an organization. Do you want to tell our audience about your organizations?
Sure. We have a few aspects that we work on in the cannabis field, and first and foremost is New Approach Oregon, which is the PAC that's responsible for the Vote Yes on 91 measure, and we have stayed active to do our best, both statewide and across cities and counties, to enact what the voters intended. And that was to treat marijuana like we do with beer and wine, and to protect the medical marijuana program. And I think we've had much success in convincing the legislature to reduce criminal penalties even further, and mixed success on working to protect the medical marijuana program. But we do all that we can to protect the medical program and to move forward in a way that we can help Oregon businesses. And then also we blog and write for marijuanapolitics.com. And if people have questions about the current changes in the law, Sarah has a great blog up, a great piece that really has a rundown of it. I put it as the main story on marijuanapolitics.com, so you can check it out and read the rundown of the law. Email us if you have any questions, and we're happy to give people the information they need.
Anything new for the Oregon farmer on hemp farming?
So I know they passed beneficial legislation, and I think they're moving forward in a reasonable way. And I know that the hemp farmers are happy about the new legislation that has been passed. And I think that is an area that the state is moving slowly but surely in. But I think that's another way that Oregon will be leading the country in how to have both cannabis and industrial hemp farmers in the same state.
So we may be producing seeds like Paul would like to do sometime on a farm, and clothing and new jobs in that industry as well.
Yeah, that's on the way.
Excellent.
We need it.
Yes,
yeah.
we do, especially in these economy times.
Yeah.
Or
We have a
non-economy
studio
times.
audience here, and studio audience members have a microphone they can ask a question at, and I think we've got a studio audience member who has a question. Go right ahead, Judy.
Just loaded with questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, our guests. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I have to say, for me, I spent months of debating whether or not to vote yes on 91. I'm a medical patient, but I really debated it, and it was only by listening to fellow activists, listening to their thoughts and their opinions about this that convinced me to vote for 91. And at this point in time, I am sorry that I did. I mean, I'm happy about the overall movement, of course, but I'm horrified. Medical patients are getting screwed. The costs are going up for people that live on SSD and SSI, people that are struggling, and Salem just thinks that they can rewrite an initiative that we passed. My question is this to you guys. So medical patients that need stronger than just raw material, where do we stand? Can we still make for ourselves as patients from our own material that we grew? Can we still make medicine for ourselves?
Certain processed medicine, yes. So if you need some of the strongest edibles, it does seem like they're trying to limit it in a way that won't make sense for a lot of patients. And we haven't figured out what the exact new concentrations for medical will be, but the recreational amount is just not sufficient at all. It's 5 or 10 grams, and that just doesn't do it. So you'd be able to make that for yourself, and then we're still waiting to hear what the new concentration limit is going to be for medical, unless it's out yet and you know anything about it.
No, the concentration limits will just be for sale at the dispensary. So what you make for yourself, you'll still be able to make your edibles as strong as you need. If you utilize full extract cannabis oil, you can make that as well. So what you can make yourself and what you share with other patients, that's still allowed.
So butane extraction, though, that's not allowed.
Correct.
No.
So-
You can take it to a processor, and the processor can then give it back to you. But yeah, unfortunately, you can't make that at home anymore.
Once there are
Or
processor
fortunately.
licenses.
Yeah. So that's probably, you can apply for them come April.
Right.
It's only a week away right now, or 2. But then it's going to take them a while to issue those licenses.
Probably, yeah.
At least a couple of months and maybe more. And then they've got to get it tested once they've made it.
Right.
Then it's got to get to the stores.
Yes.
So those people who are in that extraction business are in a world of hurt right now.
They are. Yeah, if I were them, I would be freaking out right now.
Yeah, I understand a lot of them laid off their employees. There's a lot of issues there.
I'd be protesting too.
What
Yeah.
about alcohol-based extracts for the people who make RSO or something
so
like that?
Those are in a different category. That's called the concentrate as opposed to an extract, even though it's still an extraction. But, we just have to go with what term they give. But the nice thing about the differences is that we're allowed to make that at home for ourselves, and that's the important thing. One of the weird things about it is that they say that it if it involves high heat, and then they defined high heat as 180 degrees.
Doesn't seem
And
very
that's
high to
just
me.
warm, if you ask me. But they said that full extract cannabis oil could be made at home, and so I'm hoping they'll just take us at their word on that. But you can also make full extract cannabis oil by, having a lower heat. It just takes forever to cook it down. And if you don't use a distiller, then you're not allowed, or you can't reclaim some of that alcohol and reuse it again. But you can get a distiller on Amazon for about $200, I found out recently. And I have no idea what temperature it gets on the inside there, but when it comes out, it's cold. And then you can reuse a lot of that alcohol. So
Yeah,
just
there have been
FYI.
these essential oil extraction units. A lot of them made here in Portland, in fact.
Those are even better,
They're-
yeah.
So these essential oil units work real well with that, I think.
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen next in terms of the implementation of these processes?
Gotcha. So I'm hopeful that through communications with the legislators that passed the law, potentially even the governor's office, that the Oregon Health Authority will change their interpretation of the law and allow the extracts to move forward until they have the licenses. So that's my hope. That's no guarantee. If they stick with the process they have now, then we're going to have to wait that out a few months until they have the licenses up and going. Then they're going to have rulemaking at the OLCC for the micro grower licenses, and then we're going to have the stores open and operating by October 1st. And as the member of the studio audience that had the question or the comment about the fees going up for patients and things getting more expensive for patients, we definitely sympathize with that. And one of the problems,
Yeah, the grower fee had been $50,
Oh,
which already
gosh.
seemed pretty high.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's $200 a patient.
Right.
correct, and
Unless you're a veteran. If you're a veteran, then your fee has gone down.
correct.
Right.
So all veterans, the fees gone down to $20. And one of the issues with the fees increasing the way they have is because a few years back, the legislature attached a budget rider to the medical marijuana program, forcing the medical marijuana program to generate around $7 million for other programs that aren't related to the medical marijuana program at all. And they're good programs like nutritional programs, EMT emergency services, clean drinking water services. So good things, but it shouldn't be paid for on the backs of medical marijuana patients. And I believe and I hope that next legislative session we'll be able to change that law, because now we have money coming in from the sale of cannabis. The budget is in a much better situation than it was a few years back. So hopefully we'll be able to capture that revenue and keep it in the medical marijuana program so patient fees can go down. And my ultimate hope is that we can have a fund established for low-income patients, similar to, say, our food stamp program. So your medical marijuana card can act as like an EBT card for cannabis, and low-income patients can have $100 or $200 per month from the fees generated by the sale of cannabis. So that's kind of a long-term goal that I hope we can pull off.
Yeah, because one of the things about these new laws that has upset so many people in so many states is that cannabis seems to be the only medication that gets taxed.
Yeah.
No other medication is taxed.
True, and I think Oregon is alone in not having patients have to pay the tax. In Colorado, patients have to pay a tax. It's just a smaller tax than the recreational consumers. And in California, even with medical, city localities are already taxing medical patients. So at least in Oregon, patients will not have to pay a tax. You do have the fee you have to pay.
The fees are very taxing in and of themselves.
Yeah,
But hopefully we'll bring that down.
But that's also because there is no state tax in Oregon. So
Right.
I mean, it's not like it's a special thing for cannabis in our state. If they had a state tax, they would probably be taxing the patient.
Maybe, maybe so.
And we need lounges next session. We need lounges.
Yeah, that's closed down several here in town
Yeah.
with the Clean Air Act. That's been a bad thing for people who want to get together. I mean, there's just no place to go.
Well, and it would be nice because I am one of those people that when I need my medication, I will pull it out of my pocket. I don't care where I'm at and fire up. And I know you're not supposed to do that in public, but if they're not going to allow a spot for me to step inside to privately enjoy my medication and maybe commune with someone else at the same time, my hands are tied. I either run all the way home or break the law. And believe me, I've never had a problem with breaking the law.
Well, I think that's one of the ways that people in Portland are maybe
We're
a little
luckier.
more lenient and luckier for law enforcement priorities than other places. But it is a serious issue of people who live in subsidized housing, Section 8 housing, not
Right.
allowed to consume cannabis in their own homes. They need a place that can go and that they can go and be safe, share with other patients. And I think that a lot of these rules and regulations are counterproductive of the goals that the state wants to have about keeping out of public view, keeping it in a regulated system instead of in the illicit, illegal market. And I think that they'll see that over time that cannabis can be treated just like beer and wine. Adults can congregate, adults can purchase it, and the sky's not going to fall. State will get the tax revenue, we'll create our jobs, but we'll be better off if you treat us reasonably and don't force us, to hide in a corner or hide in our homes. But we'll get there eventually over time.
And then the other aspect, too, I've heard from activists from different parts of different states that have dealt with these new regulations is, even though we are appropriately putting them, the new regulations in conjunction with alcohol sales and tobacco, it really should not be, because cannabis is healthy for you, liquor destroys you, cannabis destroys you. You smoke
tobacco.
cannabis, you live longer. Yeah, tobacco destroys you, and liquor destroys you, your liver, your brain cells. Whereas you smoke marijuana, you live longer, you're healthier, you have better, life, better quality of life, right? So to treat it like liquor and to treat it like tobacco is really still not quite the way it should be.
It's better than
treated.
being locked up, though.
True.
We all agree with that.
But really, there's still no comparison, because cannabis is healthy for you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
All right.
I think
I
the
I'm not trying to be cantankerous.
No.
These have been laid on my table and oftentimes do need to be addressed publicly.
No, and it's important to address that. It's important to always get the truth out there, move the law forward, and I think over time, as cannabis is studied, not only cannabis itself and what it does for people and to people, but also just the the statistics across the state as to the impacts of the cannabis laws, I think over time we'll start to see and learn, yes, that cannabis doesn't need to be controlled like liquor, and we can have better rules and regulations than we have for tobacco. And I think we'll get there over time, but I think that as a political matter, in 2014, even 2016, the general population's not quite there yet because they're not as informed as a lot of us are who've been studying this issue. But I think as it becomes more well known, we'll move more and more in that direction where it's not as controlled.
Yeah, we're still seeing a lot of reefer madness in the legislature itself. These people are supposed to be informed, but they don't really know what they're talking about, and they're in charge, really.
And
Treating it like poison. Yeah, the OHA has done that a lot.
And
as
I
well.
have said it's sad because a 12-year-old can do a Google search and learn more about cannabis than what some of our Congress people admit they know.
And a lot of them have been fed propaganda. They have been lobbied by prohibitionists, by law enforcement who don't want to have these laws.
Right.
And they have, been fed this line. And so I've definitely seen since, I guess the first year I lobbied in the legislature was 2005. So in the decade, it's definitely gotten better. But yeah, it's definitely not quite there. And but soon we will have legislators and policymakers who are much more familiar with cannabis than they are today.
Thank goodness. Our studio audience member has another question. Go right ahead, Judy.
Not a question, but on that specific subject, there are any number of doctors. One cardiologist that I was watching just yesterday, involved in some of the deepest and most important research here in this country, the few places that can and does. And he said his final statement was, all cannabis use is medical, whether your intention is for social or not, because the endocannabinoid system is so important, and we need the sustenance from this plant. So that was the most emphatic statement that I have ever heard. It was so simple. All cannabis use is medical, no matter what your intention is.
I remember when Dennis Perone said that back in, what was it, 1996?
1991 on my show.
So.
And it's true. And this may be, every time I wake up, there's something new on the internet about smoking cannabis. Makes you live longer, helps your heart, fights off Alzheimer's, a variety of things. And so you learn that we've been lied to. And there's this great plant, and that's why our generation, we've been told, might be living longer, and that's why our generation might have the new 30 is actually a 50-year-old person, because with the use of cannabis, we're able to be more agile, more alive, and have a better quality of life, and be happier, less stress, and so that we can live longer, live happier, and not let age wear us down like our forefathers did. Boy, I'm glad they're dead.
So I'm particularly interested, maybe you can elaborate on how patients can co-locate their gardens with OLCC licenses. Is there a limit on the number of patients that can co-locate with an OLCC
probably.
license?
So I think the OLCC is going to decide what the limit will be eventually, but
Because right now I've been licensed to take care of more than 100 patients for years.
And it will be a nightmare for you to be able to keep them and have an OLCC
It's just not going to happen where I've been growing at. I mean, I've been growing for, I can get a lot from 24 plants, over 200 pounds outdoors. So I'm able to take care of a lot of patients with that.
Well, and they're lucky to have you as the grower, because there's a lot of growers that probably won't take care of their patients once the plant numbers kick in, or maybe they're just not as fortunate to have such a supply.
Yeah.
But it's going to be very difficult.
Only so many I can only have 4 patients, or if I wasn't grandfathered in, just 2 in my outdoor garden in Portland.
Oh, because it's in city limits.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so unfortunately you'll just be 24, and then unfortunately I don't think you're going to be able to get an OLCC license within city limits.
So that garden will be limited. Will be grandfathered. I only grew 24 plants there anyway. So, but I had more patients than that. But the question, of course, that I have, and I've had with some other people here today in the past couple days, is how many patients can co-locate with an OLCC garden. Some people don't think any can, but in fact, they will be able to co-locate.
They will be able to. So it's going to be a rulemaking process, how we're going to figure that out. You're going to get a canopy boost for every patient that you grow for. But that wasn't set in the law. That's going to be set through rulemaking.
So a canopy boost, that means some kind of square foot limit? It's not a plant limit then?
Correct.
Right.
It won't be a plant limit when you're an OLCC grower. So when you're an OLCC grower, like currently there's a 5,000 square foot limit and there's a 10,000 square foot, and different for indoor and outdoor, and you can do mixed indoor and outdoor. Then they're going to have a micro grower, which is even less than that, but it's going to cost less. And then they're going to go through a rulemaking process. And of course, I'll be advocating for a largest canopy limit as possible per patient to make sure that the growers who want to cultivate for patients can. But you'll get a boost through each patient you grow for. I'm guessing they're going to allow you to grow for 16 patients maximum is going to be my guess, but that's not set in stone yet. And it's not set in stone what kind of canopy you're going to get. Is it going to be 10, 20, 30 square foot per patient you grow for that you get to cultivate on top of what you get to cultivate for the OLCC. And then they're going to allow you to have an agreement with your patient that your patient gets their allotment, and then you're allowed to donate the excess to other patients as well as sell it to medical dispensaries as well.
Excess. There's no such thing as excess.
We have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello,
Yeah,
caller.
Paul.
Hey.
Hey, I was wondering when the new fees take effect.
The new fees?
The new fees, yes.
Grower fee?
The
Yeah.
grower fee,
Oh,
is
well,
that in place immediately?
They take
April
effect-
1st.
April 1st.
Yep. And then the veteran fee, for some reason, I don't think that was in effect yet. And I don't know if you need to have any rules written for that. I don't see why you would need to, but
Well, the question is, how do you prove you're a veteran? You got to get your
DD
214
I
from
guess, yeah.
your discharge.
I've kept mine. You're supposed to keep it when you
You can
leave.
get another one if you don't have it.
I've kept mine.
I think John over here wants to say something.
I'm a veteran, 8 years in the United States Air Force, 2 honorable discharges, and I did see a little bit of action, but it wasn't as bad as like getting your butt blown off over in whatchamacallit, right? It was way back when. It was the Vietnam era. Now they told me when I called over to OMMP that it would not apply to me because my disability, which I have right now, was not service related. So I said, well, I was told just for all veterans. They said,
So it's
no.
not for all veterans? It's only for disabled
I
veterans?
think it's because it just passed.
They told me very
They
clearly
are
because
terrible.
I
That's what they told you, but
They
that
said
might not
forget-
be
they
accurate,
said
whoever
forget
you
about
talked
it.
to.
Yeah, because we were calling
up
to
the wrong
ask them if they've implemented 4014, but it's in House Bill 4014, and if you read the clause, it says in there something about PTSD, because that was the new law that passed from House Bill 3400, but the even newer bill, House Bill 4014, yeah, it actually had the PTSD part in italics, which means that that's omitted. And honestly, I just think the people that answer the phone have not been given the memo yet that that has passed, and it's supposed to be in effect right away. It's an emergency clause. And yeah, I would think that anybody that has applied, they should get a refund if they applied after March 3rd.
They've always been real slow to give refunds at the Oregon
Yeah.
Health Authority, I can
Well,
tell you that.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm a disabled vet, so I guess maybe I'll be able to take advantage of it. But like you said, I think it should apply to all veterans.
It should apply to all
I think
vets.
that's the way it's worded now. They just need to read the bill that passed and implement it immediately, just like we are supposed to.
Well, Paul,
You
I
know-
have one more question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, now I might consider myself as a veteran. I served in the Army Reserves and here in Oregon and in Washington, and I think I'm eligible for an Oregon loan. Does that make me eligible, for as a veteran status?
I'm not sure. Do you have a DD 214 showing your discharge?
Yes, I do.
Seems like that would do it.
Okay.
I think.
It would.
Okay.
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everything.
So it's all kind of just still coalescing, and we're not absolutely certain, but I think so.
Well, I'll just stick around a little bit longer and let them figure it out, and then go ask them for a refund.
All right.
go.
We hope you stick around a lot longer.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you for your help. Bye-bye.
We in Oregon are very lucky now that we've legalized marijuana at least, but other people in other parts of the country are not so lucky, and we have a little video we're going to run right now that illustrates just that. Now, here's that video.
We must work untiringly so that our children are obliged to learn the truth, because it is only through knowledge that we can safely protect them. Failing this, the next tragedy may be that of your daughter, or your son, or yours, or yours, or yours.
My name is Raymond Schwab, and April 27, 2015, my children were kidnapped by the state of Kansas based on false allegations that were completely disproven. Kansas, so draconian in their cannabis laws, we quit while we were there, and I worked for the federal government, and we thought it was just best to go home. And so I got my job transferred to Denver. We gave our children to some family members, and then they disappeared. No one would tell us anything. They wouldn't tell us the allegations, why our kids were in custody. We thought they were with family, and it really was just an attempt to stop us from leaving the state with our children. People were saying we were going to live on a pot farm, that we were using drugs, that we abandoned our children. All of those things were just hyped up in order that they would take them, and they did. And in a secret hearing, without us represented in any way, they put our kids into state custody, and they've been there ever since. It's been 8 months now. In their investigation, we got paperwork back on the day we had court that they hid from the court, saying their investigation revealed that all the allegations were unsubstantiated. We called and asked for our kids to come home. They said it didn't matter what the investigation said. We were not getting our children back unless we allowed them to subject us to psychological testing, parenting classes, all sorts of intrusions into our privacy and life, drug testing, and that we had to stop using medical cannabis, even though we are residents of the state of Colorado, not of Kansas. They want to extend their jurisdiction into this state, into Colorado, and try to overthrow the will of the people here in order to impose their will on the people of the state of Kansas. And it's unconstitutional, it's evil, and our kids are suffering because they're using them as political pawns. It's simply a matter of that. Well, fortunately, our oldest one, Tyler, was already gone. He had went to Colorado with a friend. Tyler he's our leader. He's our oldest son. He loves his brothers and sisters very much.
Devin will be 16 at the end of the month on my birthday. We share the same birthday, and we have a lot of birthdays in December, so this is a really hard month for me. His birthday was a very special time for him and I to spend together.
Caleb is our mad scientist, but he's just full of energy and life, and he's a good kid. He's a good kid.
Abe is a really gentle and loving soul.
Loves sports.
He does love to be outside and play, and very kind and gentle-hearted.
Asher, his name in Hebrew means happy, and that pretty much describes him. He's always smiling, laughing, tumbling. He ninja rolls through every room in the house. He's just full of life and energy. He's always happy. And then our youngest is Eliana. She's our baby. One, the girl, our whole marriage. She was our last one. Her name means gift of God. She's one of the ones that been potentially abused recently, and it just fills me with so much anger what they're doing to my children. We just need people's help. We need people to see what they're doing and to be a voice for our family and for all the families that are suffering under this kind of injustice, and those who are being persecuted for using cannabis as medicine. It's a plant.
So that's just a horrifying story. I was doing this show when my children were that age, I was always afraid they'd come take our children away. Fortunately, that never happened here in Portland. But in this case, this family, they were moving to Colorado to take advantage of the medical marijuana law, and some authorities in Kansas heard they were doing that, and they seized their children. It's just an outrageous story.
Outrageous, heartbreaking, and I hope they get relief, and I hope that we can continue the movement to legalize state by state and eventually federally, so no parent has to go through that ever again.
I went to a fun event that you guys organized a few months back. Are you doing, you want to tell our audience about those? Are you still doing events?
Sure. So yeah, I have several different things that I'm trying to do, and one of them is the high class event from time to time, and we did one called the Autumn Roast. It was in October, and we're actually aiming to do another event in October. We haven't quite figured out if we're going to do the same place at the Prism House or not. But we are also kind of trying to figure out, you know, if we can afford to withstand a fine if we allow use indoors. So part of me, you know, the activist in me is wanting to kind of give the finger to the authorities. But, you know, I also am a card holder in the OMMP. I'm a person responsible for a facility now. We're actually about to open Grow High Station on 148th and Powell.
Well, congratulations.
So, thank you. And yeah, I'm going to be managing there. So I'm not at liberty to just give the finger to everyone anymore. And so we are going to try to do it legally. We're going to try to, you know, make it so that people can have a place to go and use cannabis, because it's just outrageous that it's legal as long as you go into your, you know, closed door behind in your home, and that's fine. But that's not good enough for those of us that voted to be able to do this out in the open and get it off the streets. And yeah, we don't want to be relegated to just outside to use it either.
Well, my Facebook profile image is me giving the finger. It is out of a, isn't it? You've seen it, right?
I've seen it.
Out of a marijuana field. So I have no hesitation in giving anybody the finger at any time.
I'll let you do it.
I'm happy. Thank you so much.
So, in terms of your organizations, you want to tell our audience how they can contact them, like New Approach and you've got the Oregon Cannabis, what is it, Association? Industry Association.
Well, not
no longer
anymore.
at that. So yeah,
Not at that,
So
okay.
New Approach Oregon. Give me a hold of me at newapproachoregon.com.
MarijuanaPolitics.com.
MarijuanaPolitics.com. We're both on Facebook,
International Conferences
Twitter.
Group, though.
Yeah, and we help put on business conferences at International Cannabis Business Conference and the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference to help people network and help people get apprised of the latest developments. And we have a big focus on activism primarily, because that's the number one thing, is keeping people out of jail, keeping patients having their safe access. And so not only do we give the information people need to succeed in business, but also tools to help lobby and to be activists to help move this law in the way that is intended to go towards freeing the plant for all its uses.
Yeah, I mean, the law that we passed said 3 times that medical marijuana wasn't going to be changed.
Yeah.
Obviously, that didn't happen. What part of not changed does the legislature not understand? I don't expect you to defend that. I mean, but that's, and then declaring it an emergency, so we can't file a referendum against it. Has that ever happened before?
I know it's been
on a state initiative?
I know it's been like the emergency clause has been threatened before, and initiatives, have been tweaked and changed all the previously, but I don't think any initiative passed was changed so drastically immediately.
With an emergency clause.
With an emergency clause.
So we couldn't file a referendum.
Correct, and going against, really 56% of voters that said to not impact the medical marijuana program. I do think that's likely unprecedented. And I think kind of goes to your point about us being treated differently, being treated kind of like cannabis is like this dangerous thing, more dangerous than, liquor and tobacco. But I think over time we'll get over that. But it's something that really struck me back, that I didn't think the legislature would go against the will of the voters so soon. But I think we're getting there, and they are improving. They are learning more. We're doing a better job educating people. I urge everybody, contact me at anthony@marijuanapolitics.com. I like to share patient stories that have been harmed by the law, also to help people contact the legislature to share your story with them so that we can restore patient access to anybody that's lost it, and to move forward in a way that we can have safe access for all patients.
We're down to just about a little less than 3.5 minutes to go here, but we do have another caller. We're going to go ahead and take that call. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, thank you. I would like to know, we've been to Sticky's several times and looking for CBD specifically, and when she comes back, she always has this THC stuff. Do you have that stuff you got today?
So you're looking for CBD explicitly?
Well, I guess that's the one we want for pain.
Yeah, that's the best one for pain, and a lot of other. I know different dispensaries have different things at different times. Do you know any that are specializing in higher CBD varieties, or?
I don't know. I just feel like I see it at every dispensary when I go by there. But yeah, usually
this is in Vancouver.
Ah, okay.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, come to Oregon.
Yeah, I have heard that people have had success, looking, doing searches, looking on Leafly for the menus at dispensaries, but those menus aren't always updated. So go ahead and call the dispensary before you go there and let them know you're looking for a CBD strain because you want to use it for pain, and make sure they have it before you travel there.
Okay, if we're in Vancouver and we would go to Portland, is that illegal for us to transport it back across to the state of Washington?
Well, you're legal when you have it in Oregon, and you're legal when you have it in Washington. And so you're legal in both places. I don't see how crossing the border really impacts that.
Don't get
but you
caught
don't know
crossing
for
the
sure.
border.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy a 1/4 ounce as a non-Oregon patient. You can buy up to a 1/4 ounce of flower at any of the dispensaries. One of our camera people was telling me just a moment ago they have Oregon grown. One of the dispensaries has a lot of CBD varieties. I'm sure, like Sarah said, you can find it in most of these dispensaries. Technically, under federal law, everything's illegal anyway. So whether you cross the border or not, if you're crossing with just your 1/4 ounce or a small personal amount, I know in Washington you're allowed to have up to an ounce. So I think you're fine now that it's legal in both places.
Okay, well, one of the other problems is that we've not been able to get a medical marijuana card here in Vancouver. And would she have to get a medical marijuana card in order to procure this CBD stuff?
No.
Well, we appreciate
No,
that.
you
We
don't.
got to jump in here. We're down to the last 40 seconds, so we got to sign off, and we love you, right, Paul?
That's right. Thank you for coming, Anthony. Thank you, Sarah. I hope you can
Thanks
come
for
back
having us.
sometime
Appreciate it,
soon.
for sure.
Thank you for your question. And good night. We're going to go out with another great song by John Cornette and help us restore hemp.